Imagine being part of one of the most influential, beloved television shows in history. A show that changed pop culture, redefined how audiences thought about comedy, war, and human connection, and then choosing to walk away from it all, right as the world is watching your every move. That's exactly what happened on MASH, a series that didn't just entertain millions. It reshaped television as we know it. It blurred the line between humor and heartbreak, between satire and raw human emotion. But while fans tuned in for the laughs, the iconic helicopter landings, and those unforgettable characters, there was a side to MASH the public never saw. Behind the scenes, the atmosphere wasn't always lighthearted. There were conflicts, frustrations, and moments where fame clashed with personal dreams, and those battles led to some of the most shocking exits in TV history. For many viewers, MASH felt like a constant, like family. It delivered humor during turbulent times. It made people laugh, while also making them think. And it built characters that audiences came to love deeply. But off camera, not everything was smooth sailing. Over the years, some of the show's most beloved stars made the difficult decision to leave, each for their own reasons, some driven by ambition, others by creative frustration, and some simply by personal exhaustion. Some actors were written out with unforgettable storylines that left audiences heartbroken. Others seemed to vanish without explanation. And while the show powered forward, many of those who left found themselves reflecting on the consequences, sometimes with pride, but often with quiet regret. Today, we're going to dive deep into the real stories behind the departures that shook MASH to its core. These weren't simple contract disputes or behind-the-scenes arguments. These were deeply personal choices that changed careers, friendships, and even the direction of the show itself. Understanding these stories means looking beyond the polished episodes and exploring the human side of success, the sacrifices, the pressures, and the unexpected costs of being part of something groundbreaking. Whether you've loved MASH for decades or are just discovering it now, knowing what happened behind the scenes gives a whole new perspective on why this show remains unforgettable. But to understand how MASH became the show that transformed television and why so many of its stars struggled with staying, we have to go back to the beginning. Long before the bright lights of Hollywood, MASH was born from real-life experiences. Dr. H. Richard Hornberger, a surgeon who served during the Korean War, saw firsthand the chaos, absurdity, and human cost of life on the front lines. His time in a mobile army surgical hospital was filled with both dark humor and devastating realities, and years later, he poured those experiences into a novel. Writing under the pen name Richard Hooker, he published MASH, a novel about 3 army doctors, blending raw honesty with biting humor in a way that struck a nerve with readers everywhere. The book captured the attention of those looking for an unfiltered portrayal of war, but it wasn't until director Robert Altman turned it into a film that MASH truly exploded onto the cultural stage. The 1970 movie adaptation was rebellious, sharp, and drenched in satire. At a time when America was still struggling with the Vietnam War, audiences were ready for a story that balanced irreverent humor with sobering truths. The film was an instant success. It earned international acclaim, won awards, and proved that stories about war didn't have to be either serious or silly. They could be both. With its success at the Cannes Film Festival and an Oscar win, the idea to take MASH to television quickly followed. 2 years later, MASH debuted as a weekly series, but its rise to fame wasn't immediate. In the beginning, the show struggled to capture an audience. Ratings were low. Critics weren't sure how to categorize it, and CBS executives debated pulling the plug entirely. It didn't follow the familiar rules of sitcoms. It was smarter, darker, and more complex. But everything changed when the network moved it to a prime Saturday night slot. Suddenly, viewers across the country tuned in, and they discovered something special. MASH wasn't just a comedy. It was a bold, character-driven show that used humor to explore grief, fear, and the absurdity of war. Gone were the predictable laugh tracks and typical sitcom setups. Instead, the show embraced the sound of helicopters overhead, the clinking of surgical tools, and the real, raw emotions of people trying to survive under impossible circumstances. At the center of the chaos was Alan Alda's Hawkeye Pierce, the quick-witted, sharp-tongued, deeply compassionate surgeon whose humor masked the emotional scars of war. His character became the anchor for the series, providing both levity and moral clarity as the show navigated increasingly complex themes. But as MASH evolved, so did the cracks beneath the surface, especially among its cast. What started as an ensemble series, where every character had their moment to shine, slowly began to shift focus, and not everyone was happy with the new direction. As Hawkeye's role grew larger, other characters, and the actors who played them, sometimes felt pushed to the sidelines. Behind the scenes, tensions simmered. Some stars dreamed of leading their own projects, others struggled with the relentless filming schedule, and many found themselves questioning their place on a show that was evolving beyond what they had signed up for. It wasn't long before those frustrations turned into exits that shocked millions of fans. The first major departure to rock MASH came when McClean Stevenson, who played the lovable yet perpetually overwhelmed Colonel Henry Blake, decided to leave the show. Henry Blake wasn't your typical military leader. He was human, flawed, and hilariously frazzled, trying to keep the 4077th running while often being just as lost as everyone else. Viewers adored him for his warmth and vulnerability, and critics praised Stevenson's performance. He even won a Golden Globe for the role. But off-screen, Stevenson's frustrations were growing. He watched as the spotlight drifted further from his character, with Hawkeye becoming the show's clear centerpiece. Stevenson wasn't shy about his ambitions. In interviews, he openly said, "I want to be number one." But this wasn't only about ego. He genuinely believed he had the talent and charm to lead his own series, to carry the weight of an entire show on his shoulders. As Season 3 of MASH wrapped up, he made the life-changing decision to walk away. But his exit wouldn't be a neat, sitcom-style farewell. The show's writers saw his departure as an opportunity, a chance to remind audiences that in war, even beloved figures don't always get happy endings. The result was one of the most shocking moments in television history. In the Season 3 finale, Abyssinia, Henry, Colonel Blake receives his discharge orders. The characters celebrate, emotions run high, and for a brief moment, it feels like closure. But in the final minutes, Radar enters the operating room, visibly shaken, and delivers the devastating news. Lieutenant Colonel Henry Blake's plane was shot down over the Sea of Japan. There were no survivors. The show ended without music, without a laugh track, just silence, reflecting the harsh, unforgiving reality of war. Fans were stunned. CBS was flooded with letters, and McClean Stevenson was already gone, pursuing his dream of leading his own show. At first, Stevenson's future seemed bright. He landed the McClean Stevenson show, followed by Hello, Larry, both heavily promoted with high expectations. But lightning didn't strike twice. Ratings plummeted, critics were ruthless, and both series were canceled. In the years that followed, Stevenson openly admitted that leaving MASH was the biggest mistake of his career. Ironically, the role he walked away from became the most iconic of his life. The character fans still remember him for today. But his departure wasn't the only one to leave fans in shock. Wayne Rogers, who played Trapper John McIntyre, also left the series, but with far less fanfare and far more confusion. One moment, Trapper and Hawkeye were inseparable. Their friendship was the foundation of the show, their banter unmatched, their chemistry electric. The next, Trapper was simply gone. Viewers were left scratching their heads, wondering what happened behind the scenes to cause such an abrupt disappearance. The truth is, the tension had been building for years. When Wayne Rogers signed onto MASH, it was with the clear understanding that the show would be an ensemble effort. Equal roles, shared spotlight, that was the deal. And for a time, that promise held true. Hawkeye and Trapper were the heart of the 4077th. Their dynamic, a perfect balance of humor, friendship, and occasional rebellion. But as the show's focus increasingly centered on Hawkeye, Rogers felt his character becoming stagnant. Wayne Rogers wasn't resentful, but he was frustrated. In later interviews, he explained, "Trapper didn't evolve. I was just there to agree with Alan." By the end of Season 3, he quietly decided not to return. The producers were caught off guard. Legally, they couldn't stop him. Rogers had never officially signed his contract. He'd been working on a handshake agreement the entire time. The show scrambled to fill the gap, and in the Season 4 premiere, Hawkeye returns from leave only to hear that Trapper had been discharged. No goodbye, no explanation. The change was jarring for fans, But the show quickly introduced B.J. Honeycutt, played by Mike Farrell, a softer, more grounded character designed to bring emotional depth instead of rebellious humor. The tone of MASH shifted again, leaning further into heartfelt storytelling and moral complexity. Against the odds, the series didn't just survive, it thrived. Meanwhile, Wayne Rogers reinvented himself outside of acting. A Princeton graduate with a sharp business mind, he became a successful financial expert, building wealth through investments and real estate, while occasionally appearing in film and television. His friendship with Alan Alda remained strong until his passing in 2015. Perhaps the most emotional departure of all came with the exit of Radar O'Reilly, the wide-eyed, pure-hearted company clerk known for his uncanny ability to hear helicopters before anyone else. Radar wasn't just a character. He was the soul of the 4077th, the symbol of innocence amid the chaos of war. But behind Radar's boyish charm, actor Gary Burgoff was struggling with his own demons. The grueling filming schedule, the demands of fame, and the emotional toll of being away from his young family began to weigh heavily on him. Gary was unique among the cast. He was the only actor to carry his role from the original MASH film into the television series. Over time, he transformed Radar from a mischievous supporting character into a deeply beloved figure, the audience's emotional anchor. But as the years passed, the personal cost became too great. In candid interviews, Gary admitted, "Missing my daughter's early years is a mistake I'll always regret." Despite producers offering him reduced appearances and more time off, Gary knew it wasn't enough. For his own health and family, he had to walk away. But the show ensured Radar's departure was meaningful. In the two-part episode Goodbye, Radar, the 4077 struggles without him. Radar tries to hold everything together, as always, but eventually realizes it's time to go home. His final scene, walking away under the Korean sky, leaving his teddy bear behind on Hawkeye's bed, became one of the most emotional moments in television history, symbolizing lost innocence and the painful reality of growing up during wartime. After leaving MASH, Gary stepped away from the spotlight. He pursued painting, wildlife conservation, and even became an inventor, holding multiple patents. His decision wasn't about ego. It was about survival, about reclaiming peace after years of stress. His exit, like so many others, marked the end of an era for MASH, but also underscored the personal sacrifices behind the show's success. And not all departures stemmed from exhaustion. Some, like Larry Linville's, were driven by creative frustration. Linville portrayed Major Frank Burns, the rigid, insecure antagonist fans loved to hate. But while the show matured and other characters evolved, Frank remained stuck in a one-dimensional, cartoonish role. For a classically trained actor like Linville, that lack of growth became suffocating. By season 5, Linville had enough. He wasn't pushed out. He chose to leave, stating he had taken the character as far as he could. His exit allowed the show to introduce new complexity, moving away from slapstick villains to morally layered storytelling. Larry continued acting but never found another role as iconic as Frank Burns. His replacement, Charles Emerson Winchester III, played by David Auden Stiers, redefined the antagonist role. Winchester wasn't a joke. He was intelligent, arrogant, but deeply human. Over time, his cracks showed, revealing vulnerability and compassion beneath the pride. Stiers stayed until the end, delivering unforgettable moments like teaching POWs to play Mozart, a reminder that even in darkness, beauty and humanity persist. Beyond MASH, Stiers found success as a beloved voice actor in Disney classics. In 2009, he came out as gay, living his truth after decades of silence. His legacy, both as an actor and advocate, remains powerful. And finally, MASH wasn't only shaped by its men. Loretta Swit, as Major Margaret Houlihan, fought to evolve her character beyond the hot lips stereotype. Season by season, Margaret transformed into a respected leader and symbol of strength. Swit's determination ensured women had a lasting, meaningful role in MASH's legacy. Every departure, from ambition to burnout, shaped MASH into the groundbreaking series it became. The goodbyes were painful, but they helped the show grow, and reminded us that behind success are complex, human stories. While many actors chose to walk away from MASH, One key figure debated leaving but stayed, and that decision changed everything. Alan Alda, who played Hawkeye Pierce, wasn't just the lead actor. Over time, he became the moral compass of the show and one of its most influential creative forces. But what fans may not know is that Alda wrestled with his own doubts about staying as the show stretched on year after year. The pressure to maintain the show's high standards, the heavy themes, and the constant balancing act between humor and tragedy often weighed on him. Behind the scenes, Alda wasn't just showing up to act. He was directing episodes, influencing scripts, and shaping the overall tone of MASH. He was passionate about ensuring the show handled serious subjects with respect and depth. But with that responsibility came burnout. In interviews, Alda admitted that as the years passed, he felt emotionally and physically drained. Despite the challenges, he chose to stay, partly out of loyalty to the show, and partly because he believed in its message. His decision to stick with MASH helped guide the series to its historic, record-breaking finale, cementing his legacy as one of television's most iconic figures. With MASH coming to an end after 11 seasons, it seemed only natural that producers would try to extend the magic. Enter Aftermash, a spin-off series that followed the lives of familiar characters, Colonel Potter, Klinger, and Father Mulcahy, as they adjusted to civilian life after the Korean War. Expectations were sky-high. After all, MASH had become a global phenomenon, so a continuation of the story felt like a guaranteed success. But things didn't exactly go as planned. Despite a strong start in the ratings, Aftermash quickly lost steam. Critics argued that the spin-off lacked the heart and complexity of the original. Without the war setting, the familiar banter, or the emotional tension that defined MASH, Aftermash struggled to find its footing. Even beloved characters couldn't carry the show on nostalgia alone. After just 2 seasons, Aftermash was canceled, a stark reminder that recreating television lightning is nearly impossible. The spin-off's failure only reinforced how special and difficult to replicate the original series truly was. When Larry Linville left the show, many expected producers to simply cast another exaggerated, buffoonish villain to fill the void. But MASH took a different approach, introducing Charles Emerson Winchester III, portrayed by David Ogden Stiers, a character unlike any that had come before. Winchester was arrogant, well-educated, and carried himself with the refined air of a Boston aristocrat. At first glance, he seemed like an easy target for ridicule. But beneath the snobbery was a man wrestling with the same trauma and grief as everyone else in the 4077th. Stiers approached the role with quiet strength, gradually revealing the cracks in Winchester's polished exterior. His pride often clashed with Hawkeye and BJ, but over time, viewers saw his compassion and vulnerability emerge. One of his most memorable moments came in his final episode, when Winchester teaches a group of Chinese POWs to play Mozart, a haunting, beautiful reminder of humanity amid war. David Ogden Stiers stayed with MASH until its very end, and his layered portrayal of Winchester elevated the show's complexity, proving that even antagonists could be multidimensional. In the early days of MASH, Major Margaret Hot Lips Houlihan was often reduced to a stereotype, the uptight, rule-following military nurse who served as the butt of many jokes. But Loretta Swit, the actress behind Margaret, wasn't willing to let her character remain flat and one-dimensional. From day one, Swit pushed for more depth, more respect, and more complexity for the only major female character, surrounded by men. Her persistence paid off, transforming Margaret from a caricature into one of the most respected and multi-layered figures on the show. Over time, Margaret evolved into a decorated officer, a fiercely competent head nurse, and a woman navigating the challenges of leadership, love, and war. Swit's efforts helped MASH move beyond typical gender stereotypes, showing that strength and vulnerability could coexist. By the series finale, Margaret wasn't just part of the ensemble. She was a symbol of resilience, paving the way for more meaningful female roles on television. Loretta Swit's fight for her character changed MASH, ensuring women weren't just present, but powerful. Few television finales have left an impact as massive as MASH's. After 11 seasons of laughter, heartbreak, and groundbreaking storytelling, the show came to an emotional close with Goodbye, Farewell, and Amen, a 2.5-hour finale that captivated the world. Airing on February 28, 1983, the finale became the most-watched television episode in U.S. history, drawing over 105 million viewers. Streets were eerily quiet. Water usage reportedly spiked during commercial breaks as millions tuned in for the conclusion of one of television's most beloved shows. The finale wasn't just about wrapping up storylines. It was a raw, emotional exploration of war's lasting impact. Hawkeye's breakdown, the bittersweet farewells, and the final shot of goodbye spelled out in rocks as the helicopter lifted off left audiences in tears. The finale cemented MASH as more than a sitcom. It was a cultural milestone that proved television could be smart, moving, and unforgettable. Even decades later, it remains a benchmark for how to end a show with heart and dignity. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Which MASH departure impacted you most? Whose behind-the-scenes story surprised you? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you love Hollywood's untold stories, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because the next story, it might just change how you see your favorite shows forever.